So, good evening to everyone and each of you. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be here. And the first reason for that is that everything I know about NEPS is that it endorses, we share the same ambition, the same dream for the future. And that's why connecting with one another makes us much stronger. Also, I have already the feel that NEPS is a very warm and active organization, very thriving. And when you ask, how do I know that? Indeed, I went through the website and I had my contact with Lana and Sanya. But I have seen you and observed you while you arrived here. And I've seen there is a lot of friendship and warmth between you. So you are colleagues, but you know why. You work together and you have all the same goals that you want to achieve, the same dreams. Well, that's why also I'm very happy to be here and have the occasion to share the expertise that we have developed the last 50 years in Flanders in our center. And I think that they could inspire you and help you to reach your goals. And at the same time, I will be inspired by your responses to that. To start, I'm afraid I need to begin with a dark side and just mentioning the things that we have there. I must say, in 1916, I had the same topics, but at that time we didn't know anything about how worse it could go. And even lately with the war in Israel, that's beyond what we could have imagined, all these things that came after that. And I think, therefore, this is the question we have to ask. What is the way out of that? Why is it there and how can we change that? Because we cannot accept it as it is. And thinking about that, I make the kind of reasoning that all these things, except the earthquake, which is not part of my list, are man-made. It's a result of people, of us all, in fact, that are not equipped to deal with the many challenges that we meet in the world, and it continue to be more complex every day. And that's why I can say the way out is education. Why? Because education is the most powerful lever a society has to develop people, to make sure that they can be creative enough and strong enough emotionally and strong enough in terms of mental, in terms of values, to make sure that we can turn the tide. And then I think the next question is, what is the highest possible quality in education? Because we have to reach that, to develop that. Unfortunately, we all have to say that education itself is in a bad shape today. We don't find enough teachers, and the teaching is not leading to the results that we want. Even international studies like PISA and others show that Flanders, for example, is not reaching the goals. Even we are getting worse in reaching the goals. So what is then education of the highest quality? In general, when you are talking about quality in education, people would certainly straight away go and look at how the learning environment is created and say, well, the teacher has to have these qualities and the content should be this, the work form should be that, etc., etc. And indeed, that's a valuable way to look at that, because then you know what kind of training you have to give to people. Another way to look at quality is to measure the outcome. And I have nothing against that one, because in the end we must accept that's the outcome, that is the most important thing that counts. The approach can be okay, but if it doesn't lead to the outcome, it has no value. Because the society expects us to reach certain goals. The problem is that with these both, I think there are a lot of limitations to them. Let's explore a third angle. And the third angle would be to approach the educational system from an experiential view. And I make this very concrete. An experiential view, an approach means that we take the perspective of the learner, of the child, of the student, of the adult that is learning. We try to get into their skin and from there understand how things work and how learning processes go. Now, if we do that, that's what we did at the start of experiential education in 1976, and where we felt that we want to change quality in kindergarten, so we came together with 12 kindergarten teachers and we went in with them and explored and came together after exploration and observation with one question: how are these children doing when they come in the beginning and at the end of the day? Each minute, each moment, what is happening in them? How do they experience it? And that's where we could learn a lot. This taking of perception of the child, I will introduce now a kind of a clip in which I invite you to activate that capacity that you have in you to step into the shoes, in the skin of another person. In this case, it's a very young child, but still a very good exercise to do. And then you will understand what I meant when I said experiential education started with focusing on the experience of the person. Okay, well, let's do the exercise. I would like to collect from you about 8 different elements in the experience this child had during this 1 minute. Who would like to start with the first element, just to get started with it? One element that you say she must have had that experience at that particular moment, please. Being surprised. She had the experience of being surprised. Things happen and I am surprised. Okay. Next. Curiosity. From the beginning it was obvious that had a strong exploratory drive and showed that. So I am a curious person. You see what I do. Okay, second. Third. Yes. She heard a sound, and she heard that it had a particular sound here, but when it went behind her, it had another sound. So the sound came in, and she just processed these elements that came in, and to make sound of that. That was part of her. Further, yes. Immersed in the activity. Yes, she felt herself as well. She didn't was not really aware of that, but we could see that she must have been very concentrated during all the time. Further, when you look at her perceptions further, what kind of experience did she have? The stones, exactly. And they made the same noise, certainly, but when she grabbed the stones, she felt that it was cold, that it was heavier than other things, that they fell down all the time. That was what she experienced. Yeah, further. Yes.
She was looking around, somebody was actually observing her.
Yes. She made a contact with the key educator that was there. In the UK, you have a key educator for every child, and she was watching that. So again, the social element came in. You can go further and say that she experienced her muscles. She had the experience of motor actions that she did, and she controlled it because at a certain time she made a loop. She was creating that. Further, she had a left and right experience, very good for the lateralization of her. So she experienced that she has more than the experience of both. She was in control of doing it, and that's logical mathematical, because she created a moment of symmetry, meaning that she's exploring the principle of the idea, the concept of equality. For mathematics, I made it the same at the two sides. Beautiful to see all that, and all together with what you said, she experienced herself as a person with agency. I am doing this. I am allowed to do this. And I go as far as I can in it. That is what we mean by trying to take the perspective of the child. And we can do exactly the same for children in primary, secondary, higher education. From there, you can understand, we changed the panorama. We have put a process in the middle. We squeezed it in and said, okay, the approach is what we can need, and the outcome is important, but we fit in something in between that is crucial. And we never let that go. And when we go back to what you described, we can say we cannot reconstruct all the experiences as a content for every moment and every child, because that will be unique. Even the same lesson will be experienced differently. But if we want to know something about the quality, what we can do is look at the quality of the experience. And then we have a key that goes in every educational context, which is well-being. It's something you should experience while you do these things. And well-being is not enough. You need also to experience involvement. If those qualities are part of your experience, as a quality I mean, then we can say this is the best possible educational context. You don't need to believe me now, but you will believe me at the end of this presentation. Okay. So well-being and involvement above all, this is what we mean by well-being. It's one way to just get back to that feeling. And the definition of that certainly would cover your own feeling about what it is, spontaneity, open and accessibility, feeling safe, certainly, radiating and connected with oneself and others, enjoying life. It happened that we had policymakers in Flanders with a very good background or a very educated background who said, don't exaggerate with well-being. He probably meant you don't have to be permissive, and by the way, this is not heaven, so you have to be prepared for everything, so don't exaggerate with well-being. I cannot connect very well with that kind of expression, because I then ask myself, do you have any problem with a person, a child of an adult, that is radiating? Do we have to take a bit away of that radiation or what? No, we go for 100% for well-being. There's no reason to hesitate, because well-being is what you reach thanks to your interactions with the world, and it means that you have an active role in creating that well-being. And it's not just something you get by being pampered. On the contrary, a person that is being pampered all the time will not develop really and not be happy, certainly. Okay, but as I said, well-being is not enough. We also need something else. And I will show that something else in this clip here. As you can see, involvement can be everywhere, and we have even the same clues to look at the quality in homes for elderly and to see if the people there are having not just well-being, but also moments where they can use their brains and be interactive with the environment around them. So involvement, in fact, is being engrossed in an activity. Concentration is the key thing, the fascination that comes from within. Intense mental activity, it's more mental activity and cognition than emotion, in fact, even if it's very satisfactory to be in that state. And in that state, you are at the very limits of your capabilities. And we need that kind of peak level at the level of the brains to have any impact in terms of development. It's a condition for deep level learning. And we have some supporters, or I must say, on the contrary, we support others by telling this, and with our definition as well. We go very close to the state of flow by Csikszentmihalyi. A state of flow, a state of flux, a state of energy is exactly what we mean. And that state only occurs when there is a kind of balance between my capabilities and the task that I get. And indeed, Vygotsky would also be part of this, since the zone of proximal development is the one in which involvement is high. From there, we can even go to another person who has observed the Beatles and Bill Gates and many others. And I'm talking of Gladwell, who developed the idea of the 10,000-hour rule. What is this rule? It says that for excellence in whatever domain, one needs 10,000 hours of hard work combined with talent, means weekly 20 hours during 10 years. Beautiful to say that, but I have a small correction or suggestion. I think the hard work he meant is passion. I cannot see the Beatles in the 60s, you know, the 60s, in the 60s having the kind of hard work attitude that is old-fashioned, meaning hard work means you have to do a lot of things that you don't want to do, but you are strong enough to just continue that, even if they do not make any sense. That's not the Beatles. That's not Bill Gates. So that's why I say it's passion. And I'm inspired by Gladwell to say, I dream of the moment where every child in the world who would be born would get from UNICEF or from the world community a kind of a contract. In that contract, we would state, we guarantee that by the age of 18, you will have had your 10,000 hours of passion. And when I'm totally berserk, I start thinking that we might fit in a clip somewhere gently in every child that is born, and that we regularly can just try to measure how far he is in terms of the number, the times he was really passionate. But that's an idea that I leave immediately. But it would be nice to say, oh, I see that you have got already 5,000 hours. Wonderful. Let's go further with that. Good. So we are stronger now. I want to reflect on the process to go to a next point. And here we can say, important for our approach is that well-being and involvement is not a child characteristic. If we start doing that and say, oh, this is a level 4 child for involvement, and this is a level, then we take away everything that leads to this here, because it's a process variable. So involvement and well-being is something that is created through the interaction of yourself and all your background that you bring here, on the one hand, and the context as it is created, including the other children, the teacher, the material, and the world around that. And what we do when we measure it and look at it means that we can always take the part of the context with us. And we can not change the child overnight, but we can change the context overnight. And that's the opening that is made by process variables. Very nice to see. It stands above any model. Montessori, Freinet, many others you can state, Steiner, experiential education. It's not a flag like that, but you have to prove that you have worth the flag. And the way to prove it is to show and be sure that the levels of well-being and involvement in the implementation of that concept are high. Without high level, also traditional education can go ahead if they want, no problem. But if an educational context is not reaching high levels of well-being and involvement, forget the output. Because they tell us here what is promising for the future. If it's bad, there is no promise, no future. It provides immediate feedback. Teachers, once they got into the observation of well-being and involvement, after they observed that the construction area was not working very well at this moment, a lot of tensions, even the children were not really concentrated or engaged in their play. If you notice that, you will not leave it there, because you start thinking of, oh, what can I change? And yes, you can change things, and you can have a response to that very quickly. The day after you changed it, you can see, oh yes, it's better now. I have made the right move to change it. So you don't have to wait until the end of the year to get the fruit of your work. So that is important to it. And it's one criteria we can use for the whole of education system from 0 to 18 and beyond. Beautiful. Just one thing that we can test or check again and again, and we just go together into creating the high levels. The second topic I want to start with here is deep level learning. That is what we want. So I have said that's what we promise when we have high levels of involvement and well-being, but now I have to go deeper into that and say, well, yes, will it be okay from there? In general, I would say the four areas that are totally different. If I was obliged to just pick out 4 elements to give an answer to what is our goal in the end, these would be the 4 ones. The first one, indeed, mental health, self-esteem, that is the fundament of everything. If it's bad there, all the rest will cost a lot of energy and will not go by itself. It's the key point for any human being. To develop your own identity is part of that. The exploratory drive is so crucial to have involvement. Unluckily, I have the feeling in the research that we do as well that the exploratory drive is very strong in the beginning of life, but that education is capable of pushing that down to a point where you see children from 16 and older not interested anymore in the world or in anything around that. So what Dweck calls the growth mindset is missing. We have to change that because it's still there, but we have to reactivate it instead to make sure that it can shine again in everything we do. I go further. Another category are competences and life skills. And yes, we will focus on that in a minute, because if we want to equip persons, children, for the challenges that we have, it's obvious that competences and life skills will be a key to that. We cannot put them aside. And the last one is the basic attitude of linkedness. You see, they are totally different aspects, and the basic attitude of linkedness, we use that, we need it, because that's the ethical dimension. It makes sure that what you want, that your drives, are taking into account the contexts, the world. So first, I want to go deeper into, and just with this here, the importance of mental health. As you can see, it's crucial, and that's why I forgot to show you. All these elements have to do with mental health, including the last one, which is indeed suicide, which is quite high in Flanders, I'm afraid to have to say that. But at the same time, when we go further, the 5 circles of linkedness mean that My basic attitude of linkedness is about me being connected with myself, which for me it's the same as mental health. But from there, we have connection with the others, with the society, with the material world and nature, and with the cosmos. But how concrete is that? What does it mean? Well, it means that in myself there is a kind of feel that I naturally feel connected with something else, with all these things there. And the sign of that I've connected, is that I hate it to see things go wrong in that. If they bomb a temple of 3,000 years ago, or the bridge in Mostar, I feel bad. Why? Because in a sense I'm connected with that. The people who made that, for whom it was important. I'm hurt. So I developed something like that sympathy with the other. In fact, connectedness is the basis for an action, an attitude where you take care of the other, where you want to support as a natural thing. In fact, it's the basis for love, isn't it? I want to give you all the opportunities to be yourself and to develop yourself. And that drives me. And by the way, we don't get that by moralizing. We tried moralizing for centuries. That doesn't work. It works like having moments where a person, a child in particular, feels the warmth of togetherness. And that's where you say, I want to care. And it can be the planet as well. I want to care because I see a lot of things that are not okay. It hurts me. But I learned to care, not because others said you have to care, but because I felt connected, because it was meeting a basic need. No moralizing. That's what we don't want. And there's a simple way to support what I said. Well, connectedness is the opposite of delinquency. The word tells it itself. De-link. I have no link. That's why I make things, I'm a vandal. So yes, I insisted on this one because we need it desperately. So I could go now, as promised, deeper into competences and life skills. And that's where we start indeed. If we want to look at that, we have to talk about developmental domains. And we did a lot of work, a lot of case studies. We studied a lot of curricula as well. And finally, we got these 10 categories or entrances to describe competences and dispositions. You will certainly be able to connect with each of them straight away. Gross motor, fine motor, expression through art or music or other ways to express, and language. We have understanding of the physical world, including technology, and we have understanding of the social world, totally different aspects of development, including social competence. Self-organization and entrepreneurship. That's a strange thing because it's no content, but it's something we have seen in the girl, in the Rolling Stone clip, where she was in control of every element. The agency was there. Logical and mathematical, yes, that gives you, as a tool, another capacity to be quick in categorizing, to know how things link with one another, and cause and effect. And finally, the well in your skin thing, so the mental health that we discussed already, and the basic attitude of linkedness. They are overarching. That's what we need. In general, we can say these cover all curricula. And by the way, we were very keen to make them as clear as possible, so that everyone, even parents that we include in our communication about the monitoring system, are able to understand each of them when they talk about their children. And to describe the subtlety of that, I have to tell you, why did we include social competence there and below the basic attitude of linkedness? Because most of the people would say, that's more or less the same, isn't it? Social competence is empathy. Oh yes, it's empathy. Well, then you don't need the latter one, or you take social competence away, because the simpler it is, the better. Why do we need both? Anyone who, out of the blue, could try with an answer? Why do we insist to make a distinction between social competence and the basic attitude of linkedness? I'll say why. Because a person can have a very developed social competence, capacity, and empathy, but he can use it to ruin you, literally. He knows exactly your weak spot. He can have connections with others and make sure that you have coalitions, and you will break. We can do that. And you know, people are able to do things that others don't see, but in the end, the others are bankrupt. So that's why we make the decision. We need basic attitude of linkage to make sure that you will use your social competence in the proper way, and not just to win for yourself and not for others. Okay, so we can say that for all curricula in the world, we have these elements. They call them differently. They put them more together. They separate some of the points. No problem with that. But there is a problem with the underlying view, meaning that you can use these categories and these entrances, but the way you interpret the psychological process of cognition and the development can be very different. I'll give you an example. In a test in Flanders to test the key goals, objectives that are chosen by the government in the end and approved by everyone, well, to test if they are reached at the end of primary education, this is an interesting item. Children of 11, 12 got this picture, and the question they got was this one here. In which time period would you place this city? And they had learned during the primary years that these categories, I must say, in the question, the dates were not there, but even then, that these were the categories they had to use. When we see the results, we see that 36% of the children were able to put it in the ancient times, meaning the Romans and the Greek, and in the Middle Ages. This is disappointing. 1/3 of children are capable of putting this here in these eras. And that leads for me to the question, how can we explain this disappointing result? I go back to that and I say, they have learned a lot, probably. And by the way, a bad answer would be, of an answer that I would not accept, would be, they missed the lesson about the horse tram. Because the test is meant to test something that they didn't learn by heart. So, if that is not a question, explanation for the result of that, the explanation, certainly you will connect with that, is that the children had no idea, no view on what each of these times meant. Not at all. No imagination. Not at all. And probably because they had got a lot of things like dates and people and other elements that they filled in, even the technological revolution was part of the curriculum. They got it. So from there you should be able to see, to look and say, you need a lot of technology to do that. How much irons is there? And I will point to some elements. For example, the number 96 means that there are at least 96 of these trams going around. In Rome, I don't know. Difficult to imagine. And there is even cocoa, advertiser for cocoa there, which is at that time not part yet, I suppose. So there is something really deeply wrong in how history and everything else was conducted in the school. And that's where I now say the answers to the question, what is the view you have on educational and learning processes? There are two extremes. The one is superficial learning, learning with little impact on the way we make sense of reality and interact with the environment. In this sense, no possibility to make an interpretation of this image in a way that has some meaning. Or deep level learning, which means that the learning hits your basic needs, thank you, Piaget, makes them more complex and allow to see more and grasp more. We are talking here about a paradigm shift, a deep paradigm shift. And what I want to add is that a paradigm is not something that you choose. You are your paradigm. And we see people having a certain paradigm. Policymakers have a certain paradigm about learning. And they are in it. They will not, if they don't develop that they will not get further. Second thing to add is to a paradigm is not something subjective in the sense of you can choose it, and then when you choose it, well, you can defend it. No, you can prove that the paradigms differ. An old-fashioned paradigm, a classical paradigm, is one that is not able to articulate parts of the reality that are part of that are critical. An advanced paradigm is able to see much more and to take much more into account, to sense what it means at the other side, for example. So you can prove that, you can describe that. So this paradigm shift is something we desperately need. And one part of that is to say, let's focus on competence, not on knowledge. Knowledge is one little bit. Competence is a thing, and it means that we stop to define goals separately for knowledge. We see it again for understanding, for skill, and for attitude. They are one, and you have to treat them as such. Then comes the question, because you have already felt, I don't want to stay at the abstract level, I want to make it tangible. Let's make it tangible, the new paradigm. And here you will see, again, younger children, but there's no problem with what they learn us. These are the developmental domains. And the question I will ask you will be, which domain is extremely well illustrated in this clip, and by which child? That's your task for the next 2 minutes. Can the sound be louder? Okay. You have the numbered developmental domains. Which child did you see with an extreme expression of one or illustration of one of these domains? Is there anyone who has already an idea for one? There are more than one possibilities, but let's just see which ones we can have here with you. Pardon? Let's go for that one. And you are focusing on the white guy, the one that stood up and got the kazoo? And also another. Good. Well, the other one will be picked up in a minute as well. Let's go first for the white guy. And indeed, to do that, I go to our definition of a level 5 for self-organization and entrepreneurship. Because we have, for each area, we have these 5 levels. So knows what he wants, absolutely, a kazoo. He can set a goal, can engage into action immediately. He did that because he knew I want to be part of that. So, oh yes, I remember there is one there. So he stood up and he achieved a good result. Yes, he got it. And finally, we have also to see that he went over an obstacle. Literally, he had to go over the bed to get it. He comes back. It's as if he got the definition. Probably, I said, I will illustrate this here because we are filming. So he did that. On top of that, he was very strategically busy with what he did. And there are 2 moments where you could see that. At the start, he stood up and then he took his dummy out of his mouth because the kazoo had to be there. He anticipated. He put it in the other hand because this hand had to be open and free so that he could grab it. And when he came back, he started blowing. Before he was there, he had 6 meters to go and he was already part of the music band. I admire him. It's the absolute opposite of helplessness. Oh, I have no kazoo. Here I am again. No. Straight away he got it and he solved the problem. But there's another guy I admired even more. Probably the one you have spotted as well. The one that started it. Exactly. And that one is the entrepreneur. An entrepreneur sees something that is not yet there, and he starts doing things. So you must imagine a child of 2.5 who is capable of having this all of a sudden intuition or what? Inspiration. Says, oh, I will take the kazoos and distribute them. And I do it in a very friendly way. You too, he said 3 times. Beautiful to see that. Without this, we didn't have had this beautiful moment of togetherness, because making music together, simultaneously blowing on a kazoo, is binding, is good, is important for your feeling of connectedness. You see, this is the new approach, and I'm not saying new now, already 50 years and more. People have shown in what direction to go, but some have forgotten that. It's holistic in nature. No series of boxes to be ticked. No, you that then have to count up. What do I have? Oh yes, this child is very entrepreneurial. That's not the way we choose. That's a technical thing. You grasp the essence. Our level 5 described the essence. Because I have hesitated to use the word holistic. I thought people think when you say holistic, they think you don't have to be very precise, you know. It's holistic, you know. As far as you are more or less in the right direction, it's okay. That's why I didn't use it. I hated it. And people would say it's 68. Flower power is back. No. But yes, now I accept it because it says everything's in it. Everything's in its definition. And you are the one that in your observation needs to develop the capacity to recognize them. And that's beautiful because we say then a teacher is not a technician. A teacher has to use her capacity to take perspective and to develop herself as a connoisseur. So a connoisseurship is not just for wine, but also for human beings. A connoisseur. Is it difficult? No, the children are there. They are there every day from that age. So you can start looking at who is illustrating like we did. Who is illustrating the high level for motor skill? Who is it? Oh yes, I have a clue, this one. And you talk with your colleagues about that. So you develop that capacity. And there is a trick also that we used because we say it covers all ages. It covers all ages. People would say, terrible, very difficult, you know, the thing, it covers all ages. Because we like to have clear distinctions. For every 3 months, in UK, for example, at a certain moment, for every 3 months we have to know what he needs to do and be able and capable to. And here you are saying for all ages. Well, yes, of course. The trick sits here. The trick sits not here in this one, but in the one I normally also show, is we also always add for his or her age, and then we describe the things. For his or her age. And that's our trick. Because you can use this for adults as well. And indeed, you will see that some gymnasts are probably higher than a level 5 in what they can do. Okay. So implications for assessment is the assessment try to cover and check Where are you in terms of your competence for that area? And to check that, we confront you with a complex situation and ask you to do a task like here. The question is here, can you comment on this? Why is it like it is? And the answer to that, because I have no time to let you come in here, is that we need that to make sure that when I go to my yacht, I don't have a yacht, but just imagine, to my yacht, that I'm assured that I can step in and that the thing is not going like that on all sides. But at the same time, it has to have the flexibility to go up and down, because the boat can pass or the tide can make that change so that I have no wet feet when I go to my yacht. That's the idea. Well, when you see that, 27% give correct answers to this. Adults, teachers. And here, 18% see that it's wearing out. Nobody luckily said the paint was finished, so there was no paint anymore. That's why that part is not painted. But that's not the right question. Even if you don't understand the result that I have given, this is the kind of test that we are looking for. A complex situation. And we have a lot of these images used in a test, a mini test, and it works. They measure the same kind of capacity. And that brings me to a good reason to support involvement. This is a 3-stage rocket that leads to creativity. The first stage is the exploratory drive, intense mental activity, the state of flow. You have seen them in the beginning with the baby and all the others. They were in that state. Because of that, imagination is growing, because they had the experience, but they don't need the material anymore. No, they have a kind of construction here, meanings here, that they keep because of the intensity of the encounter. And that leads for me to say, if you don't have imagination, that's a problem. And that's why I have invented the LOI syndrome. And stands for lack of imagination syndrome. And it's very dangerous if people with power have a lack of imagination. Because they say, we are going to have this law, a new measure for education, okay? We start because it looks good. Really, it looks good. It looks the right way to get there. But you need to imagine that if you go that, you have to imagine what will happen here. And at the end, in the teachers, in the children and the parents. If you can't imagine that, it can be a disaster. So that's why I say lack of imagination syndrome. And finally, you need these images in you to be creative, because creativity is ideation and fluency. You connect things with one another that have nothing to do with one another. That is the idea. Okay, we go no further. We finished with output. A diploma is no guarantee for competence. Not at all. In any and that's because the training to get the diploma is not good enough. In any profession, knowledge without imagination is nothing. Look further than the specific objectives you have. You do something with children, try to look at for what is it there? What's the purpose? What should remain after this activity? Develop new ways to assess progress in output. The constructivist way says every person makes a known construction of the reality. Test the construction by making a complex task and see what is the construction you can make. And finally, use the concept of competence. And just 2 weeks ago, I got a new insight by someone who described something. And he said, the holistic way saves time. And I said, why? Well, because you are holistic, you see the essence. You work straight away at the essence and don't take apart the knowledge bit. I work on the knowledge and then on the attitude and then on the practice. No. So that's good news. It makes my case even stronger. Let's go to the learning environment. And for that, yes, we have all these elements and entrances. We know that all this here helps to get high levels of involvement and well-being. We have positive climate, room for initiative, action, expression, cooperative learning, closeness to the real thing, and activities that take into account the level of development. I will focus on a few of them only, and that will be first, positive climate. Already 25 years ago, I was surprised and happy with the conclusion of a research on effective schools. What is the common things in effective schools? And effective in the old-fashioned sense of the kind of testing that they did. And they said a positive group climate. I didn't expect that, but I applaud it. So yes, absolutely, that is critical. And here you see a kind of definition of that, but you can feel already friendly atmosphere. People enjoy what they do. In the faces you can see that teacher and pupils have a good time together. Students dare to speak, experiment, and even make mistakes. Spontaneity is there. There is an unforced science. And humor is never far away. Making jokes, letting their imagination run wild is part of that atmosphere. I like to read it again and again. So that's what we need to have. When we interview children from the third and fourth year of secondary education, we find some relevant thing that has to do, expression to do with group learning. There is, she says, or he said, it was just delivering the lesson and away. And teachers didn't really seek contact with us as a student. Here, they immediately threaten with sanctions, and then I don't feel good about that. Or, if you don't sit well, and now she speaks about other children in the class, if you don't sit well, those leaders of the class, they are going to make fun of you in front of the whole class. You feel that these elements have to do with climate. But there is also a positive here. They organize self-help groups over the afternoon so you can help each other if you've been ill. So they bring the material of the things that you need. So we found these elements that certainly connect very well with positive climate. Room for initiative is crucial. For that you will see that, I won't go too deep into this here, but tell you that the open framework means that there is a high level of initiative of both teacher and children. And that is something that leads to understanding that there is a dialogue in creating the learning environment. That you can say, oh, what I'm doing here is the fruit of the fact that I suggested this and this came out of that, and in the end we had a new thing that we didn't imagine before. I will skip the expressions because I need to go forward. I will also skip
This is the first
the hole in the wall. Sugata Mitra is very well known for that, but I can add the link later to the thing. And what I want to go to straight away is the importance of expression. For that, I show you here, Finn, because of the length of the clip, I will show it myself. So he was pushing his car here, and he had a towel, and he did this with the towel, and again, a few minutes. And then it was very strange to see that there was no idea that the purpose was of what he did. Well, here you can see him starting anyway. But what came out is that just before, the day before, he visited this here. He was part of this here. Okay. He was part of an experience of having a wash street, you see. So my message here is that in fact we are looking at the impression-expression cycle. It seems that when a person has a strong impression like this girl here, that after that impression, she can't let it go, and she needs to paint it. Of this child here went to the kermis and had a caterpillar, and he wrote down what kind of experience this was. So it leads for me to the conclusion, and that is one of the most interesting things that I discovered in all these 50 years, is that when you have a strong impression and you want to go on to the next impression, your soul is calling you back. It's taking you here and drags you back here and tells you you are not ready. You have to assimilate it. Piaget again, is that to do something with it. And what can I do with it? Well, naturally, the children do the things that they need to do. They express it. They start doing a role play. Well, we started with a kind of incubator with eggs in, and the incubator was there in the class, and children were very fascinated by that. But an half an hour after that, they were making their own in carton, their own incubator. Why? Because they were impressed, they needed to do that. And here comes the point where I must say language development has to do with impressions that are worthwhile, that are golden, and that scream for expression, and where the language comes in, it will stick. Because it's life. Confrontation with complex reality is the locomotive. Active work forms give the children ownership about their learning. Language develops through intense, meaningful experiences. And don't underestimate children. That was with the clip from Sugata Mitra, certainly the change. Other changes in the structure, but I won't go deeper into that. So let's go to assessment and improvement of quality. And so we can see there are two ways to measure involvement and well-being. The first one is the screening. No, it's here the scanning. I see that I'm not using my latest version. So it says here the screening, a tool for close follow-up of children and interventions. So you go over, you take a list of the children, you have a form for that, and for each child you assign a score on a 5-point scale for well-being and involvement, based on your observations of the last 3 weeks. So for each child you have to figure out what is in general what I have seen for a child, and when you have a score you get a color code. Green means everything is a level 4 or more. Red means everything is 2, one of both of everything is 2 or less. And the 3 is seen as also something that is flagged as orange. So you get a short list of children. In some classes it's a long list. A short list of children that are in the danger zone because of well-being and involvement. And from there you go to track 2 and 3, where you open a file, try to collect more information, and make interventions. I have to stress that a process-oriented approach to monitor is safer than a product-oriented one. In a product-oriented one, you say, they have to be here, you know, they have to be here on that line, yes. I see one is there, so we will do everything to get there. I call this the deficit model. Let's do everything to get there. And it looks as a good idea to do that, but it's wrong. We say, this is our line. You have to have at least 3 plus, let's say 4, for well-being and involvement. And those who are here should get there. Even if a child, like Dam, has a low score for development in mathematics in the first year of primary, we are not giving a red score for him if he is involved in his activities. And the teacher says he holds on to material, so I'm giving material for mathematics so that he can get involved in it. While for Jamal and Hans, who are a very high score, they are already here for mathematics, and they should be only there. But we picked them out because we saw, no, it's not all right. They hate the school context. They are bored all the time. And that's why we see that some children who are gifted commit suicide more than other children who are not gifted. You see, This is the best way to handle it. A product-oriented is, we have to leave that. If a child is low, we'll give it a yellow color to say, don't forget, you have to be sure that for this child, certainly, you will create a situation where involvement is high. For that reason. But it's not a reason to retain him. So, this is what you get if you put these scores together in a school level. Can you imagine that this gives you the idea for Sam? We knew that in the beginning it was wonderful, learning was wonderful for him, he was very competent, but then he gets not enough initiative, it goes down, and even totally deterioration at the end of the 4th year of primary. And you see, you see that in the prognosis here, 30% of the children are worrying, are very worrying. The children we are facing and we are working for, who suffer from inequalities, will be in these 30% if the context is not supporting them. We will not forget them. They will be visible. And certainly, Ola, that's not what I meant. Certainly, it's the first sign for risk of stagnation. Look at this here. Well-being and involvement goes down. Demotivation follows. Lower achievement follows. Greater retention follows. Dropout is the end. So simple. Well-being and involvement. The scanning technique, we use it to not, the teacher use the screening because she has to work at every child and support it. The scanning is something that we would use to get a view on the quality from a higher end, in a sense, in the school itself. Meaning that you will take a sample of 10 children that you observe, 10 children you observe in a class, and you make a round of 2 minutes per child. And that's how you collect the information. Every child 2 minutes and get a score on involvement. That leads to a mean score that you can have. If you have 2 rounds, you can already do something with this information if you do it in every class or group of the school. This is what we got in one large research project, in which you can see that the lowest level was 2.8. The highest was 3.46. We have translated these scores in a learning efficiency percentage. Can you imagine? 2.8 is 56% of efficiency. 3.4 is 69% of efficiency for these children. The difference. I will skip this one, but just say after 1 year we could raise levels dramatically to get more school classes into 3.5, which for us is the minimal acceptable, 70% of efficiency. And indeed, all this explains the low output of education that we see. Most schools do less than 3 on a 5-point scale, so less than 60%. You can imagine that I have a proposal. Let's install at the school level, the level of a region, the level of a country, and the European level, a system to feel the pulse from 0 to 18. We use the same tools for babies and toddlers. With screening to get close to each child, you cannot get closer to a child than to ask yourself all the time, how is he or she doing here? And the scanning to take the easiest possible measure of the status of children's rights. Because we are measuring if the basic needs of a child are fulfilled. That's the children's rights. And that's a process of emancipation. The conclusion is there is one key, take the perspective of the child, and I will skip this one because of the time. But I show you this one and see that this is the old didactics, ticking boxes, back to the whole class teaching. We hear it from some very high-ranked policymakers, not looking at the whole child, inefficient organization and management. That's the past, which explains, as I said, the decay in measured school results. The teacher reduced to an executor of guidelines. This is what we want, to let that go and to get this here. A powerful learning environment, a deeper look on each child, development as goal, children with co-ownership, covering all domains towards new structures. The teacher thriving and fully engaged, enjoying the view of children flourishing. And I end with this view here, well connected with your own mission. Well-being and involvement in the child, well-being and involvement in the adult, well-being and involvement in the team, well-being and involvement in society. And finally, well-being and involvement at the planetary level. It's all about synergy. You see the energy going up as a wave, but coming down as well. Because if all the things above are all right, it will come back to the child itself. That's what you seek. You seek a context in which children in inequalities can still thrive. So that's where I will end, in wishing you a lot of success in a shared mission that we have. But I need to stop with this word here. Hope. There is hope. We've seen the black first picture. There is hope. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.